Come on in. Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon. I can't tell you what my real last name is, but let's just say that it's Badger. I've worked for the NIA, and my more recent cover is as a product manager for Google. All of you in this room were chosen and have been pre-screened to hear this confidential information. As you can imagine, this is a very sensitive topic for a corporation like Google, since we're dealing with mind control viruses and shaper technology from another dimension. It is very important that none of this information leaks to the press. So for that reason, the real Ingress Tech Talk is happening right now, or the official one is happening in room 7. But that government-censored talk will be the one that's recorded, and we'll get into the real details here in this room. And we'll dive deeper into the rabbit hole down in this room. But before we start, can I see a show of hands of how many of you are members of the Resistance? All right, and how many of you are members of the Enlightened? All right. Now you two settle down. I know this is a lot of Smurfs and frogs in the same room, but this is considered neutral territory during this talk. So I want all of you to put your scanners in your pockets. It's very important to not fire any XMPs during this meeting. In the event that there is an accidental XMP discharge, please exit the room swiftly but calmly from the rear, and any level 8s can leave with me through this more secure door up front. All right, let's get started. For the sake of this tech talk, we're all just going to go under the premise that Ingress is just a game. All right, so, and I can't teach you all in 30 minutes all of the technical aspects of building Ingress, but my goal today is more to spark your creativity and talk about some of the product design principles and lessons learned that our team has had developing Ingress. And my hope is that you will leave Google I/O with an exposure to lots of new technologies, Google Glass, all the other cool things that you've seen today and we'll see tomorrow. And that you'll also have lots of creative ideas for the next generations of games that you yourselves and your friends can build using this technology. So my first quote is that with change comes opportunity. Throughout history, we've had many technological leaps forward. We've had the semiconductor, we had the steam engine. If you go back further in history, you have the time when our ancestors first found the obelisk and it kick-started our creativity. And humans have always played games. But the way that we play games has evolved. So we might have started off kicking rocks, and then it got a little bit better, and we could bat a rubber ball around in the king's court. And then that turned into the digital version of Pong. We get Nintendo tennis there. But as technology marches forward, the gaming technology marches forward in step with that. And each generation of games has its leaders. In one generation, it might have been Atari. Later, it might have been Nintendo, then Sony. But with each leap forward in technology, there's opportunities to take over, to be a leader in that new space, to design whole new types of gaming experiences. For example, there was a man who in 1961 invented the transistor logic circuit. And I'm sure that when he was working on this for his dissertation and invented this technology, he wasn't doing it so that we could play an electronic version of tennis. But 10 years later, the gaming industry was able to use this technology and create a whole new gaming experience. Things like the Wii Remote. Seemed like Nintendo was kind of in a lull there. It was all about the Sony PlayStation, but they used this technology to really come up with something completely out of the box and a whole new way of playing games in a much more physical manner. You had examples of the social graph as a technological tool, being able to interact with other people, even though in this case it was limited to sharing virtual baskets of corn or whatnot. So I don't know how much of a technological leap that was, but there was something powerful in being able to interact with other people, friends, and your mother-in-law as you play a game. And it seems like the smartphone generation just came out of the blue as well. You had companies like Sony and Nintendo who had really dominated with consoles, and they tried to have their portable gaming devices. But all of a sudden, your Nexus device, your iPhone, became a much better gaming platform for that type of snack-type gaming. And you had all new leaders like Angry Birds create new experiences. So basically, I wanted to just sort of show you that there's these technological leaps, and each one of those is an opportunity for you and your company and your friends to create something that the world hasn't seen before in gaming. And we live in a really powerful environment right now where these smartphones are getting out to the hands of billions of people. And so you have billions of people now with this supercomputer basically in their pocket that's connected to the network, and it has all sorts of sensors. It's got a proximity sensor and a motion sensor, an ambient light sensor, gyroscopes, NFC chips, cameras, GPS, Wi-Fi. These are all ingredients that you guys are going to be able to put together in whole new ways to create whole new types of experiences. And we're really just starting to tap into that. It's not all about just doing Angry Birds clones, right? So I just want to really challenge you guys to as you spend time in Google I/O today, really think about the technology that you see, whether it be Google Glass or other devices, and just think through, like, what new types of gaming experiences can that make possible? How can we experience the world in a different way via gaming? I just want to take one step back and just talk about, why do humans play, and why is this a field that should even matter? There's so many other important things in the world that we could be using technology for, but why does play matter? First of all, play creates new neural connections in the brain. It helps us develop. I've got 2 twins, and it's amazing. They're 5 years old now, but they can play Angry Birds and Plants vs. Zombies and all these different things. And it's a way to sort of form connections in the brain and learn about our environment. It's also an arena for social interaction and learning. Sort of on the schoolyard where we learn how to make friends and to confront that bully and to make alliances and factions and connect with other human beings. And that's an important social skill for humans that we learn while playing. It's also a safe place to discover and develop talents and skills. So sort of like an Ender's Game, gaming can be a safe environment or a safe simulation for you to maybe learn leadership skills. So we've seen this in Ingress, where there's people who are organizing their own events or organizing the tactics of their squadron or their faction. It might be learning other types of skills, how to just organize plans and implement those or execute events. So gaming really gives us an arena, a safe environment where if you mess up, it's not that big of a deal. You can restart the game. But you can still build these skills and then use those skills in your day-to-day life. But in many ways, games still fall short. So while they might make us smarter, I don't really want my twins to be playing video games all day long necessarily, right? And I don't want my kids doing that if it means they're going to be sitting in the basement, eating Cheetos and playing first-person shooters all day, tethered to a screen. So, we wanted to think about, how can we make gaming even better for humanity and more interesting? So that's where Niantic Labs came into being. We're a small autonomous group within Google, and we were formed with this mission to create adventures on foot. We really wanted, when we started off, the team really wanted to explore opportunities to use this new technology, things like Google Glass, things like these smartphones with really great maps behind them, and really think about how we could use augmented reality to create a new gaming experience. And honestly, we really did want to get people off the couch. It's a really important epidemic in many developed countries, just health and the importance of getting out and not being stuck to a chair. And also to reconnect people with their local community. So technology can bring us together, but it can also isolate us if the technology isn't developed right, where we spend more and more time at home at night playing with virtual friends, but not really rubbing shoulders with real people. And so, yeah, this is, we don't need to necessarily be tethered to a desk, by technology. Technology should help further our needs and our goals as humans. It should make us better. We don't need to necessarily adapt who we are as people to the technology. I think there's a great opportunity for contextual computing. So, when I was a kid, I would write a book report about a European city, so I might just read a book about it and write something. But how much better is it to actually visit that city, but then have at your fingertips access to, the world's greatest encyclopedia of information about exactly where you're standing. So, you can, at your fingertip, the information about that sculpture, that statue, that mural that you're right in front. And how interesting could it be that that's maybe pushed to you, that you don't even know that you're interested in that sculpture. But this smart system can basically detect that you're standing near something that we think that you might be interested in, and be able to push that notification to you, and for you to have an aha moment is very powerful as a concept to us. Here's an example of someone at a historical grave marker, to be able to pull up more information about that person. So it's another way to not only connect with people around us, but also connect with our history, which in our culture, which is also very important. And this was just a funny joke that I don't even know who created it, but someone on the internet posted this to G+, and it was the mom is telling the kid, go outside and play, and he's like, but I don't have my Ingress invite yet. So we definitely wanted to try to build a gaming experience that would get kids and adults and families back out into their neighborhoods and out, honestly, burning calories and exercising. And to that end, this was another goal, was this feeling that we could get people out into their neighborhood and connecting with their local community. So there was a really touching post that one of the Ingress players posted about this park. This is a park in Las Vegas, and I guess he had lived there for like 6 years, but had never gone into this park. It wasn't in good repair. It was closed at night. It wasn't seen as safe. But as soon as he started playing Ingress, of course, there were some sculptures in this park, and so there were some portals in our game. So he went through that park for the first time, and he discovered it was actually a nice, quiet, green space in his city. But now he cared about it. Now he wanted to talk to his city councilman about, hey, maybe we can clean up the graffiti. Maybe we can work to keep it open at night. And so I think there's a real opportunity that when you get out of your basement and you start intermingling with other people in your local community, that you start caring about the locations in your community. So that was another important goal for our project. So let me tell you about it. Seems like you guys are all into Ingress, but for the few of you who haven't played it and don't know what I've been talking about for the last 10 minutes, Ingress, I'll briefly go through what Ingress is, and then I'll talk about some of the design principles and what we've learned building it. So the world around you is not as it seems. So the whole point of Ingress is that there's this veil that that blocks our vision about what's really happening. And those of you who are chosen and are sort of part of this secret society have the technology to be able to unlock and see what's happening beneath the covers, and basically play the game of Ingress throughout your daily life. So the fiction here is that there's a mysterious energy that has been unearthed by a team of scientists, and its purpose and force is unknown, and so and it has a way of influencing us. It's said that it's actually what sparks the creativity in the minds of artists when they go to create a sculpture. It's that creative influence comes from the XM that flows around there. And in Ingress, there's of course the two sides. There's the Enlightened, who seek to embrace the power that this energy may bestow upon us. They like the idea that as humans we can evolve, we can get better. And then the Resistance, they struggle to defend and protect what in their mind is left of our humanity. They really want to keep us who we are. They feel like we don't need to change. And really the idea here is that the world is a game. So instead of just playing on a small virtual world or a virtual board, we really have the whole globe. And that was one of the powerful aspects of our game, was launching it worldwide, and it's so fun to see the international nature of the game. But basically, as you walk around in the real world, you pick up the XM, the energy to power your technology. You visit these portals or these public art installations, and you do battle for control of these locations. One of the interesting things is that as we were designing the game was thinking about, well, what should be the locations that people can test? And I think it was interesting that we picked public art. It worked out well because they tend to be in locations that are accessible, usually day or night, relatively safe locations, and also it's just a bonus that they're very interesting and oftentimes overlooked. I've noticed that by playing Ingress, all of a sudden I'm noticing sculptures that I never would have seen before because sort of my eyes are opened to looking for that, and it's a cool experience to find something new in your neighborhood. Maybe you've walked that street hundreds of times, but you sort of never really looked about what you were walking past. So it was an interesting synergy there to combine this game element of a portal with real-world art. And then the basics of the strategy, it continues to evolve and get more interesting and complex, but the basics of it are to control these locations on the map and then create lines or links between them, which can form a triangle, which is a control field. And the idea is that you're trying to control the minds of the humans who live under that control field. And so the scoring is based upon the population data under those control fields. So if you build a really large control field in the deserts of Nevada, it's not going to be worth as many points as, say, if you're able this weekend to build an amazing control field over the population of San Francisco. One of the fun elements of the game is that we have an investigation board. This is at nianticproject.com, and every day we post new elements to the story. These might be video clips, they might be redacted, CIA-type documents that sort of fill in all the pieces of the story and the backstory. And it's an interesting storytelling medium. It's very different than just reading a book cover to cover. It sort of unfolds day to day, and you sort of dive right into it to get a sense of this alternate universe that's happening sort of around us. And then there's also a gaming element to it as well, where there are puzzles and passcodes hidden in it that you can unlock to power up in the regular game. And then another fun element of Ingress is this ability to form alliances. And it's been fun to see people cooperating across neighborhoods and cities and countries to exchange portal keys and to work together at these large events and really meet each other in person. So that's sort of the basics of Ingress, and hopefully you all get a chance to play it this week. We have a number of events happening concurrently with Google I/O, and so come visit us at our desk there to get more information about the schedule. But now I'd like to talk a little bit more take a step back and talk about some of the key learnings that our team had at developing the game and also seeing it unfold as we've launched it in this beta period. There's a lot of stuff that we didn't even think about in advance that we've learned through this period that can be applicable to as many of you guys are game designers or game developers, that can help you as you think about the types of games that you want to build, whether it be using Google Glass or the latest Nexus phone device. So one of the things that was interesting is just how the two elements of the game, you have the story, but then you have the game mechanics. So the rules, the things that you're allowed to do. And it was really interesting to see how adjusting the game mechanics has a direct impact on how social your game can be. So for example, we started testing the game with Googlers, I think back in August of this last year, with a much smaller group of people who were Google employees. And in the first version of the game, one individual could power up a portal basically to the full power on their own. So it was an interesting, we constantly during this alpha period, we've been making adjustments. So it was very interesting to see when we had the insight to change the rules such that you actually needed 8 players now to build the highest level, the most powerful portal. It was really fun to see all of a sudden it instantly went from players playing on their own around Mountain View campus to these squads of groups of 8 Googlers sort of roaming in packs at lunchtime. It was very powerful, and it was instant. It was like the next day you saw this change. So I guess the learning here was just if that sort of stickiness of that cooperation is something that you're looking for, you can definitely think about ways that you can tune your game to encourage that type of behavior that you want to see. Another thing that we've learned is just the importance of balancing and tuning all the various variables. So I think the key learning here that we had is the importance of investing the engineering work to make all of your variables configurable knobs that are easy to change without an update to your server You want to be able to tune these things really quickly and do it based upon feedback from your players. And it takes a little bit more work to architect your software such that you can do that. But it's also really nice because then you can have people playing more of a game design role, maybe not your engineering team, who then can use an admin console to change the various values, because it can dramatically change the playability of your game just with these variables that you do. So for example, attack versus defense. That's something that we're always finely tuning, and it's very hard to get right. But how difficult should it be to defend a portal once you have it? If you make it too difficult to defend, you very quickly can get just a static game board where everything just locks up, and any new players, they can't do anything. They can't attack, or there's no turnover. And if you err on the other side and make it too easy to attack, then there's this sense that what's the point? That I've built this control field, these portals, but it's so easy to take down. That doesn't feel fair either. So you're constantly going to need to balance things like that. And you're also going to need to tune all the variables as far as how do you balance the magnitude of the power of a high-level player versus a low-level player. You're constantly going to be having, in a game like this, new players joining this world. They need to feel powerful enough that they can have fun. But at the same time, you need to reward the players who have invested the time developing their skills and building their capabilities so that they can feel like they are more powerful. So that's something that you'll need to balance. And as I said, I think it's important. We think it's important to build a social experience. Not every game has to be social. But we found with our data, as we look at our retention rates and activity with players as they sort of progress through the game, that those players who come to these events, who make friends with their faction team members, they actually stick in the game a lot better. So that's an interesting insight for you guys as you design your games, because you want to get as many new players to start your game as possible, but you also want as many as possible to stick around and continue to play your game. So, for example, I don't necessarily play Angry Birds anymore. I'm kind of over that, right? But there's a lot of games like that. So it's very easy to design a game that's fun for a few days, maybe, but it's much more difficult to design a game that people will continue to play over and over again. And so this was just one of the things that we've learned, is that we've found with our data that if you can build a game where people can make real friends, I think people stick around and will play much longer. And I felt like this was very rewarding to just see people meeting each other, like having beers together and meeting in real life. I mean, there'd been a lot of talk over the last couple of years of social gaming, and it was sort of more of in a context of Facebook games and things like that. But this to me, this feels real. This feels like a much different experience than where you're meeting people in real life. This was just another thing that sort of shocked us, was just the creativity of the community. And we did this thing that when we launched the game, we weren't sure exactly how much server capacity we had, so we decided to use a beta approach where we'd have an activation code system. And at first, we started off where you would just submit your email address at ingress.com, and we would, as space was made available, we would send you an email with the activation code. But we had this insight on G+, once we saw a fan basically create some artwork for Ingress. And so we had this insight to reward him with an activation code. And then it sort of just snowballed from there, where fans started posting all sorts of artwork in exchange for these activation codes. So I think we found that the fans who went through that process, they were also much more likely to stick around with the game because they had invested something in it. And they'd sort of embodied some of the fiction and the story elements before they'd even started the game. So I don't think every game needs to do that, but for us, we felt like it was definitely a positive experience having that and just seeing that creativity of the players on the community. This was actually an example of an image that fans created, and I just thought it was just a cool piece of artwork. But this was in the context of he sort of described the attributes of the various levels. So you had sort of a new player who was just starting out, maybe didn't quite know the optimal strategy for deploying resonators or for linking portals together. He might have been that annoying new player who put the link in the wrong spot that blocked your really great link that you were planning. And then you had players sort of progressing. They kind of got the hang of it. Maybe they had a few friends. Maybe they belonged to the G+ local community, and so they were sort of strategizing on the weekend. And then you had sort of your ninja level 8 player who sort of had built his own wearable harness for his scanner and all these things. So I think it is important to build a game where you feel like there's this progression where you can, and we're still tuning this ourselves, but you can make it fun for a new player, but also make it something that players don't get bored of too easy and they can continue to progress as well. And this is really basic to gaming design, but one way to think about it is there's lots of different types of people, different types of psychology. They play games for different reasons. So we have an example here of Bartle's taxonomy of player types. On the y-axis there, you have, in the upper left, you have killers. So these are the people who really just get a sick pleasure out of destroying your portal, right, or attacking your fields. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with that. And then on the lower left, you have socializers. So that's the equivalent of beer league softball, where you're not there to necessarily win. You're there to have some beers with your friends and play and meet new people and have fun. And that's a great way to experience games as well. In the lower right, you have the explorers. So in a game like Ingress, these are the people who just really love finding the new artwork in their city and exploring new types of areas, but also exploring new experiences, meeting new types of people, and that kind of thing as well. And then achievers. So to the extent that there are missions, they want to accomplish all the missions. They want to get to level 8 as quick as possible. And that's a different type of player. So I'll talk about how we sort of think about these different groups for the game. And your game doesn't necessarily have to hit square on any of these quadrants, but it's nice to sort of think about this, to think about ways that your game can reach sort of a broader audience, and you have different ways of playing your game. So for example, Portal Discovery is almost a game in and of itself. So in our game, we use public art installations or architecture or murals as the locations, and we've outsourced that and let the players, you guys themselves, find this art and take photos of it and upload it. But that in itself is a game. Like when I was traveling, I was in Park City skiing this last winter, and we didn't have as much Portal data, so I just spent an afternoon walking down Main Street there in Park City, and there was all these sculptures and taking a photo, and it was actually a really fun way to experience a new location, and it became a game in and of itself. So this really scratches the itch for that explorer type personality, and it's also reaching different demographics. It's not like, I think this appeals to people who wouldn't traditionally that you don't think of as gamers. This isn't like first-person shooter type thing, but it's just a fun way to experience the game. Another element that we're working into Ingress is sort of a collect them all type element. In a lot of ways, these portal keys are tradable and interesting. I think back to G+ and Facebook. People really like those maps where it's like all the countries you've visited or all the states you visited. And whenever you see something like that, we have this impulse to sort of fill in the whole map, or we want to collect them all. And portal keys are kind of like that too. I like this idea of having missions where maybe you're here for San Francisco for the weekend. I feel like it'd be kind of fun to be like, can you collect a portal key from each of the 20 most iconic locations in San Francisco? I feel like that in itself is a game. It has nothing to do with battling the Enlightened or the Resistance, but it's sort of an offshoot of the game that's fun in and of itself. It's also funny, we've seen examples of people trading portal keys in airports. So it was very like international drug trade kind of thing going on, where like literally people were like meeting at like Chicago O'Hare Airport, and you had one guy flying from one city, and then he'd drop off the portal key, another guy would pick it up and transfer it to another city. So it's very cool to think of these virtual drops, these drops of virtual items, and you can almost imagine them sort of flying in their luggage on the airplanes from countries. And so there's something cool about, I went to Paris and I brought back the portal key from the Eiffel Tower, and you can show your friends. So I think that's sort of an interesting way to play the game. Another interesting thing that we learned was that players can help build the game. The Who the Bleep suggested this portal, that was a really popular meme on G+. So there's all the Ingress-related posts that happened there, and that was one of the most reshared ones. I thought that was funny. But so we launched these tools in the game where you can snap a photo of just that first photo is our office in Venice, California. It's like this binoculars thing, and it's any sort of interesting architecture or art. And then and also users, in addition to submitting portals to help build out the game set, you can suggest edits to the title or the description, or you can submit a better photo and that kind of thing. So I think this is great, and it's interesting. We just, in the talk before this talk was the talk from the Google Maps team, and they have also used this a lot too, where if Google Maps has your street labeled incorrectly, like you can go to Google and you can edit that, and everyone's contributions build up and they add to a better experience for everyone in the game. So we know that our portal data set isn't perfect, but it's getting better every day from your submissions, and we have an operations team that reviews those submissions and helps remove duplicate data and fixes bad photos and things like that. So I felt like not every game needs to use this type of system, but it was definitely an interesting insight, an interesting tool that we use for Ingress. Another interesting topic, and we had a lot of discussion about this, is just the notion of, should you have all of your players play in one world, or should you have sort of many virtual dimensions or worlds? So this is interesting in that it's very difficult to tune going back to that slide about tuning and balancing, it's very difficult to balance your game so that it feels fun for a new player versus the advanced players who already are very powerful in the game. So one way to deal with that is to just create different virtual worlds. So maybe all the new players play together in their sort of sandbox, right? And then maybe the advanced players play in a different virtual world, these different dimensions. And we sort of debated that back and forth as a team, but we really wanted this idea that it felt more epic that we all played in the same virtual world. So that when your friend went to Paris and got that portal key from the Eiffel Tower and brought it back, it was meaningful to you versus something where everyone was kind of playing in these disjoint worlds. So it's just something to think about. We're still struggling to balance things properly, but that's one of the decisions that you'll have to make if you build a similar type of game, to think about how you want to juggle that. And also another topic was launching global versus local. With some of our apps like Field Trip, we had a strategy where we're just going to focus on where we had good data in the United States and launch Field Trip first in the United States. And then as we got better data internationally, we would roll that out. With Ingress, we actually decided to launch international. And with your games, I think you'll have to just sort of weigh the pros and cons of that, of focusing on the area that and versus spreading yourself out. But also the opportunity with the global game is just it can feel more epic as well. That I love this screenshot of I love just occasionally like going to the com in Ingress and just looking at all the different languages, some that I don't even know what language they are, and it's just fun. It's fun to think of all these people and all these different cultures and all these different countries playing the game. And I think on G+, especially, you definitely build some momentum there, getting that critical mass of players if you launch globally. Another more technical but an interesting thing is to build so that your game can scale. I mean, we all want our games to be popular, but it's very difficult to do. But in the case that it does grow very quickly, you want to be prepared for that. And so this is just sort of a pitch for using Google technologies. We use Google technologies, and these same technologies are available to you as developers as well. So definitely make use of Google I/O to learn more about the cloud infrastructure and app engine and all the different services that Google makes, because these are technologies that we use, and they do grow with your game as it develops. Another interesting learning that we had from our game was just the importance of the story. The game is not just about the dots and the lines. It's also about, the story can help make these dots and lines feel more meaningful to you. So you don't necessarily need to build an investigation board like this, but it's definitely fun to think about. As you think about equipping your team of developers, your engineers, and your game designers, you might also want to think about making sure that you have a story, someone who's creative and that can help write and craft that story for your game, because I do think that it adds a richness to the game. And then once you have that story, just another tool that I would pitch is just the use of YouTube, another Google company, another Google technology, as a great medium for reaching people. It's very easy to have these videos shared on G+. We've been doing this Ingress report, where it's this news report of that week's events in Ingress, and it's been very fun to see the contributions from players to that, and then having us basically highlight the best of that week on YouTube. It's been a good way to reach new users. We even had a book. I think this is the first book published by Google But yeah, we had an author write a whole story about the Ingress backstory, which was a lot of fun. So yeah, $2.99 in the Play Store, available now. We had another interesting thing you can do is like you can combining the story with the game. We had some events where the outcome on the battlefield on the game would actually have a direct impact on the story. So we had one where whether the resistance, we have this character named Clue who had some videos on YouTube, and so we had this event in Scotland, and the idea was that if the resistance controlled the William Wallace Memorial at sundown on a certain day, then the story would shift, and it was sort of a choose-your-own-adventure. So like then Clue would be aligned with the resistance, and if the Enlightened controlled that portal at that time, then the story would shift, and she would join the Enlightened. So we felt like it was definitely an interesting way to help merge the story with the game mechanics as well. And then finally, another pitch for G+. We really weren't sure what the impact would be on G+, but I mentioned the art contest that we ran, and just it's been amazing to see the new communities tool on Google+. It seems like there must be more Ingress-related communities than any other topic, but there's global Ingress communities, but then down to local cities and areas for Resistance and Enlightened. So it's just Google Plus is just a great tool for meeting new people. So maybe these aren't already your existing friends, but it's a way to meet other people who share an interest with you. So as you're designing your game, you might want to think about how you can use Google Plus to get exposure for your game, but also to build a richer community with your players. So this was just some examples. I was always amazed just to see how dedicated. We've already had the one on the left is actually a fake tattoo, but the one on the right looks real to me. So just that idea of building a community where your players can feel a connection with the game. And these are just some great art contributions that I really liked from G+. Whenever we were having a bad day, or there was just a bug that or things just weren't going well, it's like you just go to G+ and you just see stuff like this, and it just refresh you as a game designer. So it's so fun to see all the creative stuff that people were posting there, and even more so because it really aligns with the creativity and art theme of Ingress. Art's really at the core of Ingress with the sculptures and whatnot. So it was fun to see that. And we had things where people where they were knitting things, they were making things with physical objects, photography, cartoons, different memes. And this is another way to basically to get exposure for your game. Just embrace that, those quirky, funny things that your fans can do. We had our team create Ingress gear, basically anything that you can do to build that community with your fans. Then interactive feedback. It's hard to see, but it's a chart of the XM economy in the game that some player did, and I'm like, that's something that maybe I should have done as a product manager, but I was too lazy to do that. So it was fun to see the players be able to contribute. And as we tune adjustments, we listen to the feedback. So people will say, "Oh, I hate what you've done," or "I like what you've done," and we weigh through that, and they're able to quickly iterate on the game and hopefully make it better every week. And then G+ is also a great tool for organizing events. So we have our Operation Bowstring event. Of course, tomorrow is going to be a lot of fun. We have the great party afterwards. Make sure you get your drink ticket downstairs and everything. But yeah, G+ is a great way to organize that and get the word out and get people to your events. And the events, as I mentioned, is just a great way to really engage your players and make them active. And finally, we kind of want to think about games as a sport. I mean, we're thinking about how can you make this so it's fun? And I thought of the example, well, every weekend I play in a weekend tennis league, or you go to a local park and there's pickup basketball. So I just sort of challenge you to think about how can you think about a little bit of the merging between what you think is video games and what you think about sports, because there's sports like soccer that they're not that complicated, but you don't get bored of soccer. You play soccer every week. So I think there's a lot, especially when you get these physical games when you're out moving around. I think about, challenge you to think about, how you can make a game that really is simple but is fun. So we've thought about, incorporating, 4-quarter periods, different scoring mechanisms, basically trying to learn from games like football and soccer, and thinking about it in that context. Think about, unique partnership opportunities in our world. You can get power-ups from different products. One option, you could charge a subscription to your game, or you could just charge for your game. But I think with these types of devices and technology, there's lots of opportunities for you to think creatively about how you can monetize your game. still maybe make it free to users. And then finally, I challenge you to think about games that can have a positive impact in the world. Bringing people together, improving health, helping people develop leaderships and skills. I think that's very rewarding. And then what's next? Just challenging you to really soak it all in here at Google I/O. Check out Google Glass, check out all the devices and technology, all the software and tools. I think just as I mentioned earlier, there's those technological breakthroughs that allow whole new groups of game developers to leapfrog the current leaders. And so just think about whole new types of gaming experiences that you can create using these tools. And that is it. So I'll answer some questions, and then be sure to check out the game event this week while you're in town. And also we have a booth downstairs, so come talk to us about the game. Yep, thank you. All right, first question in the back.
So what is Google doing with all this data? What's your ulterior motives here?
Yeah, this is the classified talk, right? Now, honestly, it's to build a fun experience and a fun game. I know there's been speculation. Oh, Google could use this data to improve maps, and maybe that's the case. But we haven't even thought about that honestly. And so I think we're taking the approach of, can we build a new type of gaming experience? Some of it is to showcase the technology. So something like Google Glass, there's definitely a good synergy, right, with these types of games and Nexus phones and different types of technology. And I think that's sort of more what drives it. Go ahead.
Okay. Have you thought about, well, a couple questions, both relating to money. Have you figured out how much your run rate is for this game? I mean, if you had to actually pay for it, not being Google. And then also, have you figured out how to...
We just use fake money. I don't know.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, but you get your services for free, I would suspect. I'm just wondering if you figured out what the run rate would be if you were an outside company.
I don't know.
And then also, have you thought about how you would monetize the game if you decided to do that?
Yeah, monetizing, I mean, we've definitely... We're still focused on building a great, fun game and growing the user base, but we're confident that if you build a game like this, that we can come up with ways to monetize it. And so, as I mentioned earlier, it might be charging for the game, it might be subscriptions, but we're really trying to avoid that, and we're trying to keep the game free. And we're really, because we're Google, and we kind of come from things from more of an advertising point of view. So we've been doing some partnerships with some local businesses like Jamba Juice. We think there's something powerful in sort of helping influence and encouraging people to go to a retail location. So we made the Jamba Juices, we did an experiment where we made them portals in the game. And so we're still collecting data from that. We've done a partnership with Hint bottled water, where it's there's power codes underneath the bottle caps that you can type into your Ingress app to get power-ups. And so I think maybe that's a way to do it. But to be honest, we're still sort of brainstorming what the business models might be at this point. Go ahead.
Actually, I'm surprised you haven't mentioned one of the key findings, and that is that the invite code should actually come with spare batteries as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we could have a partnership with the battery makers, right? We just sell a whole bunch of batteries. I've got one in my bag too, yeah.
But actually, two questions I had were answered and answered already. But any plans for above level 8?
We're thinking about it. We're thinking about different types of missions and achievements and things. I mean, it's sort of a rat race, right? Where like we could do 16 levels and then 32 levels. And I think you could just keep doing that. So we're trying to think of other ways where we can build enough headroom where you feel like there's a progression there. But we're still debating how far we want to take it with just leveling up on the point system. We're still figuring it out.
Cheers, thanks.
So I think one of the hardest thing to scale is the human aspect of the game, right? So you mentioned you have a team of people that's approving portals. What's a good strategy of scaling that? And I guess the second question is, how long does typically a portal get approved right now?
Yeah, it's definitely taking too long to approve portals. There's a couple things that we're doing to improve that. One is we're building better administration tools. So it was very primitive what they were using before, but we're building some better back-end tools where they can see the photo of the submission. They can quickly edit the data and approve or reject it. So those tools have they're actually much more productive with those tools. And then we're also hiring out that team. I mean, there's different strategies where maybe you can have fewer people review items and whatnot, but we're trying to balance the speed of approval with also quality. So I think we'll find a better balance there where we can get them done a little faster, but we don't want to start approving like photos of like a rock in your backyard. We want it to really still be art. Interesting.
I'm sure a lot of dev players here have the same questions as me, but can we expect a set of official APIs coming soon?
It's something that we've talked about. I think maybe in the future, but we don't have any plans right now.
Okay, I have a couple questions. First off, you had commented on how a lot of portals are at like works of art, but I know at my college campus we initially submitted works of art, and one person went around submitting just about everything.
Yeah.
Some of the portals didn't get approved, some of them did. So now we have these random like buildings that don't make sense as portals. Is there going to be some process to suggest portals possibly be removed? The issue is now we're running into sort of portal saturation.
Yeah.
Where you can't walk 5 feet without tripping over a portal.
Yeah, I mean, so the one complaint is like the portals aren't getting approved and added fast enough. The other complaint is when there's bad quality and things are getting approved that shouldn't be approved. And there is a tool in the game now where you can report what you think is a bad portal. If you go into the portal info view, and then you click on the photo, you can report, and then that goes to one of our operators who can review that and remove it. So it's still a slow process, but I can promise that it's something that will improve and speed up.
I saw bad title and bad description. Is there actually a just delete portal option in there?
I think right now just flag it as like a bad.
Okay.
Just in general, is either a bad description or a bad.
My other
photo.
question is, what are the plans for level 9 and above?
Yeah, so just as I mentioned, we're still debating that internally. We don't want to turn it into a rat race where we go to level 128, but we're trying to think of other ways where we can have progression. But yeah, we're still thinking about it.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Going back to the battery pack comment, I'm wondering if there's anything being done to improve battery life.
It's something that our engineering team works really hard on. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the energy is probably taken up by just actually the display being on. So I mean, I think we're brainstorming ideas, different types of game mechanics where maybe you can play with it in your pocket in certain contexts, and so you could have the screen off and on, kind of like we have this field trip app that runs in the background while your phone is off. So I think it's something that will continue to improve is the battery life.
Thanks.
I want to ask about your comment on the two IITC.
So yeah, I mean, at this point, Google's definitely a developer-friendly company. I was a product manager for the Maps API for a number of years. I think we're still in a beta period, and so I think it's important right now that the players kind of all use the same tools and use the official tools. I mean, part of that is from a playability point of view. Some of it is also just, our server capacity is still, like we're still limiting access to the game, and so we still are at a point where we need to have people use the official tools, just so that they don't hit on our servers incorrectly.
Okay, I have another question. Because I'm from Hong Kong and I represent a part of the players in Hong Kong, and we find that mocking is a very serious problem now. And I want to ask if you're working on something to avoid the mocking of locations.
Oh yeah, and so yeah, that's another thing that our engineering team is constantly sort of battling over. Is we definitely are working to prevent people from spoofing their location while they play. And so on our servers, we can do things like if you hack a portal in San Francisco and then 5 minutes later you're hacking a portal in New York, there's things that we can do on the server side to detect that and cancel it.
Are you
We're out of
planning
time,
to
unfortunately.
use?
She's given me the
Okay.
thing. So, but thanks everyone, and come to our party and play the game. Yep. Right. Hey.